My parents handed my sister a brand new BMW with a red bow, and all they gave me was $2 crumpled. That was the night I decided I was done. I left at 2 a.m. and blocked them all. Please stay with me as I share my story. My name is Callie Hartsfield. I'm 23 years old, and I have spent my whole life being treated like the extra piece in my own family. My parents, Margot and Dennis, never tried to hide who their favorite was. My younger sister Selena, just 21, was the golden child. She got the best schools, the newest clothes, the praise, the attention. I got excuses. You're older, Callie, you'll understand. You're stronger, Callie, you don't need as much. Those words were drilled into me until I almost believed them. But nothing compared to the night everything finally broke. We were in the backyard, lights strung across the trees, a whole party thrown in Selena's honor. My parents stood proudly in front of a brand new BMW, wrapped with a red bow like something out of a commercial. Everyone clapped, champagne glasses raised. Selena squealed and hugged our dad while our mom snapped pictures with tears in her eyes. I stood on the side, pretending to smile, pretending to be happy for her. When it was my turn to be handed a gift, my mom pressed a small envelope into my hands. I opened it, and inside were 2 wrinkled $1 bills. I thought it was a joke, some placeholder for something else. But my parents just nodded and moved on, as if that was normal. Some guests laughed awkwardly. Others looked away, but no one said a word. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. My chest burned and my hands shook, but I forced a smile and excused myself to the bathroom. I stared at my reflection and saw someone who had been invisible her whole life, someone who didn't matter in her own family. I realized at that moment it wasn't just favoritism. It was cruelty, and I couldn't stay any longer. That night I waited until the house was quiet. At 2 a.m, I packed my old duffel bag with what little I owned. I wrote a short note, left it on the kitchen table, and walked out. At the bus station, I blocked their numbers, my heart pounding but strangely lighter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't their afterthought anymore. I was free. Selena had always been the center of attention in our house, and it started long before the BMW. When we were kids, she was treated like a princess. My mom would buy her new dresses for every holiday, while I was told to wear whatever still fit from the year before. If Selena left her plate on the table, someone cleared it. If I forgot mine, I was scolded for being lazy. When she threw a tantrum, she was called spirited. When I spoke up, I was told to calm down and act older. One memory still sticks with me. I had a small savings account my grandmother helped start for my college fund. I was around 16 when I learned it was gone. My parents said it was for the family, but what they really meant was it paid for Selena's private high school tuition. She wanted the best school, and they said it was only fair since she was promising. I had to settle for community college and figure out how to pay for it myself. I worked evenings at a diner while juggling classes. My hands smelled like grease from scrubbing pans, and I often stayed up late writing essays at the kitchen table while my parents slept. They never asked how I was doing, but they always asked if Selena had enough money for cheer uniforms or weekend trips. When I came home with tired eyes, they told me I was being dramatic. Every milestone I reached felt like it belonged to someone else. When I graduated high school, my parents didn't plan a party. They just said congratulations in passing. A year later, when Selena graduated, they rented a hall, hired a photographer, and even ordered custom cupcakes. I stood there, clapping for her, wondering why my hard work never counted. I remember saving for my first car. It was an old sedan with peeling paint, but I paid every cent myself. I was proud, even if it rattled when I drove. My parents laughed and said, "At least it runs." But when Selena wanted a car, she got brand new keys handed to her without a second thought. When I questioned the unfairness, my parents twisted the blame. They said I was jealous, that I should be happy for my sister. They told me I was too sensitive, like I imagined the whole thing. It made me doubt myself for years. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I really was supposed to just accept things. But deep down, I knew better. I wasn't asking for luxury. I wanted recognition, some sign that my effort mattered. Instead, I was the background character in a story where Selena was always the star. It wasn't just favoritism. It was erasing me while building her up. Those years shaped me. I learned how to work hard, how to survive without support. But I also learned that no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough for them. And that truth hurt more than anything. The night of the party is burned into my mind like it just happened. Our backyard had been transformed with strings of lights, tables of food, and music that carried down the street. People from the neighborhood filled the space, all of them there to celebrate Selena. She was glowing in a new dress, the kind that looked like it had been bought for this exact moment. Everyone's eyes were fixed on her, waiting for the big reveal. My dad clapped his hands, called for silence, and walked her over to the driveway. Sitting there was a brand new BMW, gleaming under the lights with a giant red bow stretched across the hood. For a second, the whole crowd froze, and then came the cheers. Selena shrieked, covering her mouth before running to hug him. My mom cried as if it was the proudest moment of her life, snapping photo after photo. Guests raised glasses, toasting to her bright future. I stood off to the side, my face hot, my hands clutched together so no one could see them shaking. When it seemed like the attention couldn't get any bigger, my mom turned toward me. She smiled the kind of smile that said she hadn't forgotten me after all. She handed me a small, white envelope in front of everyone. For a split second, my heart lifted. I thought maybe there was something meaningful inside, some small sign that I mattered too. I tore it open quickly, only to find 2 wrinkled $1 bills sliding into my hand. There was a pause, a sharp silence that didn't last long. Someone chuckled, another forced a laugh, and then the room of strangers joined in, as though it was harmless fun. My parents didn't even blink. My dad said, "A little gas money for you." And my mom waved her hand like it was a joke I should take lightly. But it wasn't funny. It wasn't lighthearted. It was cruel, and it was done on purpose. I tried to keep my face steady, tried not to let the sting show. But my throat closed up and my vision blurred. I excused myself before anyone could see the tears. Inside, I locked the bathroom door, pressing my back against it. The music and laughter outside sounded muffled, like they belonged to a different world. My reflection in the mirror looked broken, red eyes, trembling lips, a girl who never belonged in that house. That was the moment it finally clicked. I wasn't just ignored. I was the punchline. Every sacrifice, every time I swallowed the unfairness, it all led to this. 2 crumpled bills in front of a crowd, like my whole life was worth less than spare change. My heart didn't just hurt, it felt like it had shattered into pieces I couldn't put back together. Standing in that bathroom, I knew I couldn't keep playing the part they wrote for me. I was done being the one they mocked. I was done pretending I didn't see it. That night, something inside me shifted, and I promised myself I would never let them reduce me to nothing again. The house was quiet when the party ended, but my mind refused to rest. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards as my parents moved around before finally going to sleep. I knew I couldn't close my eyes and wake up in that place again. Something in me had snapped earlier, and now there was no going back. I sat up slowly, careful not to make a sound, and reached for the old duffel bag under my bed. It was faded and frayed at the edges, a bag I had kept since high school. I filled it with what little I owned: 2 pairs of jeans, a couple of shirts, my worn sneakers, a toothbrush, and the notebook where I had scribbled dreams I never told anyone about. Every zipper I pulled felt like thunder in the silence, but no one stirred. At the kitchen table, I grabbed a pen and scrap of paper. My hands shook as I wrote the only words I could manage. "Don't worry about me. I'll manage. I just won't be back." I didn't want to waste ink explaining. Didn't want to give them the satisfaction of knowing how deeply they had cut me. They wouldn't understand anyway. The clock read 2:03 when I finally opened the front door. The night air was cool against my face, and for a moment I just stood there, listening to the crickets and the distant hum of cars on the highway. My heart thudded so hard I thought it would give me away. I stepped onto the porch, then down to the street, the weight of the duffel pulling on my shoulder. The walk to the bus station felt endless. Streetlights cast long shadows, and every sound, the barking dog in the distance, the rustle of leaves, made me look over my shoulder. I half expected my father to storm after me, demanding to know where I thought I was going. But the night stayed empty, and I kept walking. By the time I reached the bus stop, my feet ached and my chest felt tight. The station itself was nearly deserted, just a couple of strangers waiting silently. I bought the cheapest ticket I could afford and sank into a seat near the back of the bus. The smell of diesel filled the air as the engine rumbled to life. As the bus pulled away from the familiar streets, I pulled out my phone. One by one, I blocked their numbers: my mother, my father, even Selena. Each click was like cutting a rope that had tied me down for years. When the last one was gone, I set the phone face down on my lap and closed my eyes. The town grew smaller in the window until it disappeared into the dark. My pulse finally began to slow. For the first time, I wasn't trapped in their world anymore. I didn't know what waited for me, but I knew I'd never walk back into that house again. The bus carried me into a town I had never been to before. I stepped off with my bag and no real plan. I had just enough money for a cheap motel, but after 2 nights, even that was gone. I spent the next weeks drifting between couches offered by people I barely knew. Sometimes it was a waitress I met on shift, sometimes a classmate from community college who happened to live nearby. Every time I unrolled my bag on the floor, I told myself it was temporary. Finding work wasn't easy. I walked block after block, handing out applications until my feet hurt. A small diner finally took me in, and though the pay was low and the hours long, it kept me afloat. The work was rough, balancing trays, cleaning sticky booths, smiling at rude customers, but it was honest, and for once, no one treated me like I didn't belong. My manager, a middle-aged woman named Dana, noticed how quickly I learned and trusted me with extra shifts. She didn't know my story, but she gave me chances without asking for anything in return. The other servers became like a safety net. They shared meals when I couldn't afford groceries and covered a shift if I got sick. They were strangers at first, but their small kindnesses felt larger than anything I had received at home. I wasn't the forgotten one in their eyes. I was just Callie, another girl trying to get by. That alone gave me strength to keep moving. Little by little, I put away money. I skipped nights out, ate cheap sandwiches, and wore the same few outfits to work. Each payday, I tucked bills into an envelope until I had enough to think about renting. It wasn't much, but eventually I signed the papers for a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The place was cramped, the walls thin, and the windows rattled when trucks drove by, but it was mine. For the first time, I turned a key in a door and knew it belonged to me, not to anyone else. Living alone felt strange at first. The silence after long shifts was heavy, but it was also peaceful. I didn't have to listen for footsteps in the hallway, didn't have to wonder what mood my parents were in. I filled the apartment with small things, cheap curtains, a second-hand lamp, a plant on the windowsill. It wasn't luxury, but it was safety, and that was worth more than anything I had left behind. With every month that passed, I grew more certain of one thing. I would never let anyone decide my worth again. I had carried their rejection for years, but in this new life, I built value for myself with every plate I served, every bill I paid, every quiet night I survived on my own. I had been reduced to nothing once before, and I swore it would never happen again. 2 years passed in that little apartment above the laundromat, and with each season I felt myself change. The diner that first gave me a chance became the place where I learned how far I could push myself. I worked until my feet ached, but my effort didn't go unnoticed. Dana, my manager, pulled me aside one evening and offered me a lead position. It meant longer shifts, more responsibility, but also better pay. For the first time in my life, someone rewarded me for working hard instead of ignoring it. The extra money gave me room to think about the future. I had always wanted more than late nights carrying trays, so I signed up for night classes at the local college. Accounting wasn't glamorous, but numbers made sense to me in a way people never had. Balancing ledgers, solving equations, it gave me control, a clear path forward. After long hours at the diner, I'd sit in classrooms with other tired adults, learning skills that felt like bricks in the foundation I was finally building for myself. It wasn't easy. I dragged myself home at midnight more than once, falling asleep at the table with textbooks open in front of me. But every exam I passed reminded me that I was capable, that I could steer my own life. Slowly, I built a resume strong enough to leave food service behind. The day I was hired as a junior accountant in a small office, I cried in my car before walking inside. It wasn't just a job. It was proof that I could climb without anyone's help. With steady hours and weekends free, I discovered something new, friendships that weren't tied to blood. Coworkers invited me out for coffee, neighbors stopped by with leftovers, classmates studied with me before finals. These people didn't care about my last name or where I came from. They liked me because of who I was in the moment, kind, reliable, maybe a little quiet, but worth their time. That feeling was foreign at first, but it slowly became a comfort I leaned on. I started hosting small dinners in my apartment, filling the space with laughter and voices that didn't tear me down. My kitchen table was scratched and secondhand, but around it sat people who saw me as an equal. That was more family than I had ever known. Yet even as my life filled with new faces and steady progress, a shadow lingered. The memories of my parents and sister crept in at odd times. A passing car with a bow in the window, a girl laughing too loudly at a cafe, the smell of champagne when someone popped a bottle at the office. I tried to push those ghosts aside, but they reminded me of the wound I still carried. I was stronger now, independent, no longer trapped in their cycle. Still, deep down, I couldn't shake the truth. No matter how far I ran or how much I achieved, the scar from their betrayal would never completely fade. It had been a long time since I heard anything from my parents. I had blocked every number the night I left, and in the years that followed, there was only silence. I thought that part of my life was gone for good, buried like a box you never dig up again. Then one morning, as I was checking my email before work, I noticed a name I hadn't seen in years, Margot Hartsfield. For a moment I just stared at it, my stomach twisting. I almost deleted it without opening, but curiosity got the better of me. The message was long and desperate. My mom explained that they had made a new account since I had cut off all contact. She wrote about how much they missed me, how things at home had fallen apart, and then came the truth. Selena had totaled the BMW. Not only that, she had piled on credit card debt, taken out loans she couldn't pay back, and dragged my parents into the mess. They had bailed her out more than once, and now they were drowning. What stunned me most wasn't the disaster itself, but how quickly the tone shifted. After listing their problems, my mom wrote, "You've always been the responsible one. We need your help now. We're still your family, and family sticks together." Reading those words felt like a slap. For years, they had dismissed me, belittled me, treated me like I was invisible. But now, when their golden child had driven them into chaos, suddenly I was the reliable daughter again. I closed my laptop and sat there in silence. Part of me felt bitter satisfaction, like the universe had finally balanced the scale. Another part of me, the part that still carried old wounds, felt sick. They hadn't reached out to apologize or to acknowledge the hurt they caused. They hadn't asked about my life, my struggles, or how I had survived without them. They only cared because they were sinking and thought I could pull them up. The email ended with another jab. "You owe it to us after everything we've done for you." I actually laughed out loud at that line, though it wasn't from humor. It was disbelief. Done for me? What exactly had they done, besides tear down every step I took forward? All day at work, I couldn't shake the message. I caught myself staring at spreadsheets without seeing the numbers. The thought of them sitting in that house, no BMW in the driveway, bills stacked on the counter, was almost surreal. For once, they weren't untouchable. They weren't proud, polished parents showing off their perfect daughter. They were just people who had made terrible choices, and now they were paying for them. Still, my chest tightened whenever I thought about it. A small voice whispered, "They're still your parents." That voice had been drilled into me my whole life, the belief that blood was unbreakable. But another voice, stronger now, reminded me of the girl who stood in the bathroom with 2 crumpled bills in her hand, crying while a party roared outside. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. I needed time to weigh what mattered more, the duty they demanded or the freedom I had built without them. For the first time, the choice was mine, and I wasn't going to rush it. I finally agreed to meet them, but only on my terms. I chose a small diner near my apartment, a place I felt safe, where I knew the staff would greet me by name. I told myself it wasn't about helping them. It was about seeing for myself who they were now. Part of me still wanted proof that I wasn't imagining all the years of hurt, that their behavior really was as cruel as I remembered. I got there early and sat in a booth by the window. My hands wouldn't stop fidgeting with the napkin dispenser. When the door opened and my parents walked in, I barely recognized them. My father's shoulders sagged in a way I'd never seen before, and my mother's hair was streaked with gray she hadn't bothered to cover. They looked tired, smaller somehow, as if life had finally worn them down. Then came Selena. She was the last to step inside, sunglasses perched on her head, a designer bag slung over her arm. Even in that moment, when her world was supposedly falling apart, she carried herself like the room owed her attention. She slid into the booth across from me, rolling her eyes like she was being forced into an inconvenience. The first words out of my mom's mouth were, "Callie, you look good. You must be doing well for yourself." There was no warmth in it, just an angle. My father cleared his throat and went straight into their situation. Bills they couldn't pay, collectors calling, the house nearly gone. Then my mom leaned forward, her voice soft. "You've always been our strong one. We need you now." I stayed quiet at first, waiting to see if any of them would say what I had needed to hear years ago. But Selena couldn't stay silent. She crossed her arms and said, "This isn't the time for you to hold grudges. You're better off now, so just help out and quit acting like a victim." Something inside me snapped. My voice came out sharper than I expected. I told them I wasn't a victim. I was the one who had worked, scraped, and clawed my way out of the hole they dug for me. I reminded them of every single slight. The school fund they drained, the birthdays they ignored, the way I was laughed at with 2 wrinkled bills in my hand. My words spilled out faster, stronger, until the whole table went silent. My dad muttered, "We gave you what we could. You're being dramatic." That was the final straw. I leaned forward, my hands pressed against the table, and said, "You didn't give me anything. I gave myself everything. All you ever gave me was proof I didn't matter to you." My voice shook, but I didn't stop. For the first time in my life, they had to sit there and listen. My mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, my dad shifted uncomfortably, but Selena scoffed as if my words were beneath her. Still, I didn't back down. When I finally leaned back, there was nothing left unsaid. The weight I had carried for years had been poured out on that sticky diner table, and none of them could deny it anymore. For once, they had to face the truth. The diner felt heavier after I finished speaking. My chest was tight, but not from fear anymore. It was the weight of years finally sliding off. My parents stared at me like they didn't know who I was, and maybe they didn't. For once, I wasn't the quiet daughter they could talk over. I was the woman who had survived without them. The table sat in silence, plates untouched, the smell of coffee lingering between us. I reached into my wallet without saying a word. Their eyes followed me, expecting money, maybe a sign I was about to give in. I pulled out 2 worn dollar bills, the same kind they had handed me that night. I placed them neatly on the table in front of them. My voice was steady, calmer than I thought possible. "You gave me $2. That's all you're worth to me now." The words didn't come out angry. They came out sharp, cold, and final. For years I had rehearsed what I would say if I ever had the chance, but nothing felt truer than that. I slid out of the booth, my bag over my shoulder. My father reached across the table, saying my name like he could pull me back. My mother called after me, her tone breaking, but I didn't pause. Their voices carried through the diner, but each step I took toward the door felt lighter, as if the sound couldn't reach me anymore. Selena's voice rang out last, loud and venomous. She cursed at me, calling me ungrateful, selfish, heartless. I didn't even flinch. I had heard every insult before, but this time they meant nothing. I didn't look over my shoulder, didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing my face. I pushed open the door, the bell above it chiming, and the cool air rushed against me. Outside, cars passed, people laughed on the sidewalk, life went on. I stood there for a second, breathing it in. Behind me, I could still hear muffled voices, but they grew fainter with every step I took away from the diner. That was my revenge, not slamming the table, not shouting, not throwing years of pain back in their faces. It was silence. It was indifference. I had given them nothing to hold on to, no parting gift of anger they could twist against me. All I left them with were $2 and the truth they had always refused to face. Walking down the street, I felt no urge to cry or smile. I felt something stronger, freedom, clean and quiet. I didn't need them to understand, didn't need them to apologize. I didn't even need them to hurt. All I needed was to keep moving forward, knowing I had left them exactly where they belonged, behind me. The night was cool, the neon lights of the diner glowing in the distance. I didn't turn back once. For the first time in my life, I didn't carry their weight with me. My silence had spoken louder than every word I had ever begged them to hear. The walk from the diner led me straight back to my apartment, the only place that had ever truly felt like mine. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step lighter than the last. For years I had carried a knot inside me, waiting for their recognition, waiting for them to see me. That night, I understood something I should have known long ago. I didn't need them. What I needed was myself, and I had built a life without their help. In the weeks that followed, I noticed the change in me. I no longer checked my phone expecting their messages. I didn't replay old arguments in my head. The silence from them wasn't a punishment anymore. It was peace. I poured my energy into the people who had become my real family. Friends who showed up not because they had to, but because they wanted to. When my birthday came around, I braced myself for the usual emptiness. Instead, my friends surprised me. They crowded into my apartment with a homemade cake, candles flickering, and voices singing for me. It wasn't fancy. but it was the first time I felt celebrated for simply existing. I laughed until my cheeks hurt, something I had never done on a birthday before. Looking around that small room, I realized I finally had the kind of love I used to chase in the wrong places. Later that night, when the last guest left and the apartment grew quiet again, I stood in the doorway for a moment. The laughter still echoed faintly in my ears, and I let it linger. I turned the lock, shut out the night, and leaned against the door with a smile I couldn't hold back. Under my breath, I whispered to myself, "I'm worth more than $2." The words weren't bitter. They were steady, sure, and full of the truth I had waited so long to claim. I had given myself the closure they never could. And for the first time, it felt like freedom. Do you think I was right to cut ties with my family after everything they did? Or should I have given them another chance? I'm really curious to know your thoughts. Leave them in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like mine, please subscribe and hit the notification bell.